Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
All right, welcome again, gentlemen, to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scot McKay, at Scot McKay on both Clubhouse and Twitter, Real Scot McKay on Instagram. The goodies on YouTube are accessible by searching my name, SCOTMCKAY. The website, as always, is mountaintoppodcast.com. And I invite you to join us, as always, on the fast-growing Facebook group for men. That's the Mountaintop Summit. Gentlemen, today we're going to talk about a topic, and you guys have been really, kind of hammering me to do a dedicated show on this topic, and I needed the right guest. And I've told you that before. There are just dozens of topics I would love to cover on this show, but until I find the quintessentially perfect or, nearly so guest to conduct such a show with, I kind of leave it on the back burner. I just wait patiently. Well, no more patience is necessary to talk about bringing out the playful in women, because my guest today is couples therapist from Falls Church, Virginia, and the author of such great books as No More Fighting, A Year of Us, and check this out, the Couples Quiz Book. My new friend, Alicia Munoz. Alicia, welcome.
Glad to be here, Scott.
Yeah, well, this is going to be one of those shows which, by God, had better be a lot of fun, or else we haven't accomplished our purpose, because we're talking about bringing out the playful. And really, that's what this means. Play is fun time. I mean, your work can be fun, but play is that dedicated noun, I guess, in our language, English language, that really just connotes something that, this shouldn't feel harsh or like work or like something we don't want to do. If we're playing, we're having fun, right?
Yes.
Right. So what we're going to talk about today is how women really value playfulness. Okay. And I mean, anytime you have full and ness at the end of a word, you probably can drop both of those suffixes and just say play, right? It's like joyfulness is really just joy, right? So what is it about women and playfulness? As they say, girls just want to have fun. Talk to me about that idea and how it kind of manifests itself in the daily life of women everywhere.
Sure. So I like to think about this in terms of doing and being. And you can claim that it's genetic, or you can say it's nurture, you can say it's society, but men tend to be doers, and women often are brought up to be beers. By that, I mean that women love being present. They love being in the moment. They love authenticity. And often this is in contradiction to the men that they're with, who are busy doing, busy producing, busy preparing, busy making sure that they're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's and being performers in a sense. So women love it when men can play. And in order to play, you kind of have to stop doing.
Isn't that interesting? Well, I'll tell you what, Alicia, two things come to mind immediately. First of all, I have a friend who is named Bart Baggett, and he was, I believe, on this show years and years ago, probably closer to the beginning, talking about his area of subject matter expertise, or the one he's most famous for, I might say, which is handwriting analysis. And I remember I asked him, I think it was actually offline. I don't think it was in the actual podcast or any other interview I've done with him. I said, how come all young women seem to write with those bubbly letters? And his response was priceless. He goes, well, you know what, Scott? That isn't actually female writing or girly writing or anything inherently feminine, although you'll usually see young women in particular writing that way. That writing connotes someone who lives in the moment. And that's exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
That is fascinating. I was wondering how you were going to link that, and you did. That's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you. Listen, anytime a woman calls me amazing, she's already inviting me to bring out the playful. I like to do all sorts of amazing things for women who already think I'm amazing. It just goes uphill from here. Or downhill.
That's a whole nother podcast on how women can kind of get their men to please them and give them what they want, because praise and appreciation and gratitude will get you a lot farther than criticism.
Well, you know what? You have no way of knowing this, but we've talked about this on the show before. There are all these books and products and offers about dating advice, and they seem to really have a common hook behind them, which is say these 2 simple words, whisper them into a man's ear or whisper them into a woman's ear, and he'll either marry you or she'll have sex with you immediately. And usually it's a total farce.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense in the real world. It's the easy button. It's a quick fix. And of course, relationships are a lot more complicated to get right than 2 simple words. But I'll tell you, there's an exception that there are 2 words that really do work when you whisper them into a man's ear. And the words are the ones you just said. You're amazing. You tell a man he's amazing and, oh my God, the heavens just opened up and goodies are about to rain down.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes. And what I want to make sure your audience understands is that one pathway to hear those 2 words, or at least to increase the likelihood that you'll hear those 2 words from a woman, is to practice playfulness, which is really the opposite of performance.
Ah, see what you did there?
What did I do?
You brought it all back around to your main point.
Yeah.
Very good.
Playfully.
Yes. Okay, so I was going to do the same. I wasn't going to leave you dangling by a thread, I promise. So yes, we all in this audience are nodding our heads in agreement with what you just said a couple minutes ago, which is men are usually about performance instead of presence, right?
Yes.
In your terms, which were just as effective, by the way, and meaningful, doing rather than being. As a matter of fact, a few episodes ago on this show, we talked about that very subject. And men feel like they have to fix everything, that they have to have a practical sense of what's going on and a practical solution for whatever it is. When in reality, in many situations, women just want a guy to be present, help her relax and have fun. Now, these first dates where they're asking 20 questions of each other and demanding to know their sexual past. And weirdly, a lot of women are the ones who instigate those checklist first dates. And we have talked on this show about how that's women shooting themselves in the foot because they're going to get exactly what they ask for, right? But indeed, when a man can stop trying to figure everything out, just relax and do what he does best if he just puts his mind, soul, and emotion into it, which is make a woman feel like a woman, things start going better immediately. It starts feeling more romantic. A woman's femininity starts perking up because you've instigated this playfulness in her. But I think a lot of guys, they just don't even know where to start, Alicia. And I'd love to have your opinion on maybe where they should start.
Yeah, well, at the risk of stating the obvious, Scott, I think that one place where men can start is by tuning into their bodies in the moment, by really getting grounded in sensations when they're with a woman, rather than getting carried away with their thoughts about, you know, whether she likes them, whether she's going to sleep with them later, whether, you know, she's going to do X, Y, or Z for him. So really just tuning into their bodies, sensing their heart beating, sensing their skin, their breath, that's going to help them come into the present.
Now, hold on a second. If I can sense my breath, I'm already in trouble. I need some mints or gum. Bad first date already.
Yeah, well, I'm not necessarily talking about tasting it or smelling it, but really noticing anything that's physical in the moment is going to bring you into the present.
So let's talk about how guys often experience this idea of instigating the playful. A lot of guys are like, well, listen, if women just like to have fun and that's a feminine gift, as is play, joy, silliness, the party, and I'm trying to bring out the playful in a woman, doesn't that mean I'm being feminine myself?
Well, if there's a lot of effort going into whatever you're doing with a woman, if you're putting a lot of efforting and kind of extracting energy out toward a woman, often she'll sense that and you run the risk of her kind of closing up or withdrawing. So it's really to actually bring something out is more of creating a space where you're receptive, you're curious, you're open to spontaneity, and not so much working hard to kind of getting her to be playful and fun.
Well, what we talk about in this show a lot, Alicia, is the importance of making a woman feel safe and comfortable. And you just talked about creating that space, which in today's world, that vernacular often has the surround of safety.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Safe space is, a buzz phrase nowadays, as also is holding space for someone, right? And for a man to make a woman feel safe and comfortable, to help her to physically, emotionally relax in his presence, really, in my estimation, is the very first step of bringing out the playful. Because if she's knocked out any fear, if she's knocked out any insecurity around the guy, then her feminine nature is going to want to start having fun now. The work is done.
Yeah.
The heavy lifting is no longer necessary. We're relaxed. We're having fun. And she's going to make sure this turns playful, typically, as long as she feels safe.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's really speaking to the idea that if there's danger, if there's threat, if either a woman or a man's nervous system is on high alert, hypervigilant, expecting something negative to come at you, it's really hard to relax, because playfulness fundamentally is about being able to let go and relax and be open. And so when a man creates that kind of safety for a woman by kind of letting her lead or following her lead, but at the same time, being able to switch roles back and forth between leading and following and leading. And I'm talking here about conversation and banter and, jokes and questions and, that kind of dynamic where you're almost like a tennis match. You're kind of lobbing the ball back and forth in terms of who's leading, who's following. That really creates safety and playfulness, because there's not sort of one energy dominating and another energy kind of submitting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a fantastic definition and description of what banter really is. And you know what, Alicia, I think a lot of guys trip over that. They're like, okay, I know I should be bantering with this woman, but how much should I measure my sentence? I mean, if I start talking for 20 seconds instead of 16.4 seconds, am I doing this wrong? And again, it kind of descends or degenerates even into men trying to do instead of being.
Right.
It throws water on the whole concept of exactly what you're trying to do. It's self-defeating. Right. And, what kind of goes along with that, getting back to what you just said a couple minutes ago, is there's this idea of toxic masculinity, where men are trying to violate women's safety and security because we're such awful, terrible people. But that's really a perversion of virtuous masculinity. Yes. We as men are born and designed to make women feel safe and secure. This is why women love men in uniform, because they're the heroes around here. You're my hero is the 3-word version of you're amazing. It's a little much and it's a little over the top, but I just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, no, I love that correlation that you're drawing. And I love what you're saying about toxic masculinity being a perversion of what men are truly, what their true purpose is.
Yes.
And this idea of serving and pleasing and honoring women. And, women also have their version of both toxic masculinity and toxic femininity. I think that.
Thank you.
The yin and the yang, we all have both aspects, and both the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine, can be in service to each other, or they can be at war with each other.
Isn't that fascinating? And yet, archetypally, I think we really are born to do the right thing here. It's kind of like I've said in the past, a Boeing 737 wants to fly. It was designed to take off and fly. But until someone comes along who knows how to fuel it up and fly the darn thing, it's going to sit on the tarmac.
Yes.
So masculinity and femininity were designed to fuel each other up and fly each other.
Yes.
And when men show up and they forget that primal element of what literally catalyzes femininity, which is their masculine energy, that yin and that yang, and they're sitting there trying to say the right thing or do the right thing to get the result they want. How do I get this woman into bed? And all these other, I don't know, I would call them twisted ways of thinking about a first date and what you want to get out of it. Hey, here's a hint. help her feel safe like a man should. And that will wake up the femininity in her, because that's what masculinity does.
Yes.
I mean, when you make a woman feel safe, comfortable, protected, provided for in the moment, quite literally, women feel more like women. Then you become amazing. Then they bring out play and joy and fun and all these things we live for on weekends. And the next thing you know, you feel more like a man. Then you hear, oh, you're my hero. You're amazing.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. And to add to that, sort of to speak to those men who get anxious, who get self-conscious, who start to kind of second guess their words and their actions and what to do and say with a woman, there's a really easy, simple solution. All you have to do to please a woman, to help her unfold, to help her feel safe, is to put 100% of your attention on her for a little bit of time. It's like a flower that opens. An analogy that I like to use is that of like cats and dogs, right? If you have a kitty cat, you don't just jump on the cat. You don't try to grab it. You don't start petting it and stroking it. You don't chase it around the house. It's going to hide. It's going to scratch you. It's going to hiss. It's going to put its ears flat on its head. If you want to get that cat energy to come to you, you need to be patient. You need to wait. You need to focus your attention on her and gently, slowly draw her in with your focused attention.
You know what's fascinating here is the clubhouse room I run with my fellow dating coach, Cindy Olina. It's called Dogs and Cats Living Together. And it brings men and women into a common room to talk about dating and relationship stuff. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed about cats, which has to be at least part of what drives the analogy of women being cats and men being dogs, is that if you say, here, kitty, 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 kitty to a cat, the more likely it is not to come to you. The more you try to chase the thing and get it to come to you. I mean, you dangle a sardine, it's going to run right at you, right?
Yes.
But, the cat will look at you, kind of blink its eyes and turn its head slowly at the same time, and then just saunter away in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
And women are kind of like that.
Yeah.
But, you get on the phone talking to someone, and that cat's all up in your chili, rubbing itself against your face and lifting its tail and sticking its butt at you and, go away. Meanwhile, dogs are like, oh, you're going to give me attention? You want to go do something cool? Let's do it. Let's get out of here. And men are like that.
They're humping your leg. They're licking your face. They're toppling you over.
You bet. So, a woman gives a man this inkling that she's interested in, he's humping her leg, right? I don't think we understand this so well about each other, that there's good and bad in both of those situations, right?
Yeah.
So, yes, if a man can stop, and I'm just going to go ahead and use the trigger word here, worrying about some agenda tied to having sex with her, or, oh my God, does she like me? Is she going to reject me again? Like you said before, get out of your head and into your body, all that Eckhart Tolle-ish stuff. Stop taking yourself so seriously, dude. That's the thing. Because as long as you're taking yourself so seriously, that's the enemy of the playtime, right?
Yes. And part of what can help men take themselves less seriously is, I know there are different types of men, so this doesn't apply to all men, but I think a lot of men look to rules and regulations and external sources of approval and, ways of operating. Am I getting it right? Am I getting it wrong? Am I checking the box? Is this success? Is this failure? When a man comes into his body and tunes in to how he feels, what his kind of gut reactions are, what his sense of pleasure is, or joy, or curiosity, something as simple as the hair kind of rising up on his neck or a flush of heat in his face, those little indicators can be ways of following his own impulses rather than trying to get things right according to some external authority.
Just watch a few Mickey Rourke movies and you'll see what I mean there.
Yeah. And women have a real authenticity radar. So they're really good at picking up on bullshit or picking up on...
they know when you're trying to trick them.
Yes, they do.
So really what guys need to understand is women want to be playful. And they want to respond to a man who's helping them coax out that playfulness. Now, you mentioned the rules and how men like to have procedures and manuals. And this is probably, as an aside, why a lot of particularly left-brained people, men and women, frankly, but, a lot of the guys who are engineerish have such a hard time doing this because there's a manual to follow here. And yet nothing succeeds at bringing out the playful better than laying down the law and breaking it.
Yeah.
There's this tie between playfulness and naughtiness that's irresistible to women, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What comes to mind for me are how all mammals play when they're born, when they're young, as a way of testing boundaries, as a way of the rough and tumble of, a little bit of risk, a little bit of going outside of the box and, coloring outside of the lines. And they've done studies on this and play in mammals. And I think in men and women sitting at a cafe or a cocktail bar or meeting at a party, this applies to them as well. That play really does create this resilience. It taps into social intelligence and it really reflects flexibility. When you can push the edges a little bit, that speaks to your flexibility, your resilience, your creativity.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys, like you said, need a little more patience. Because at prima facie here, what you're talking about sounds really complicated to a lot of guys, Alicia. You have to know how to put tab A into slot B, and then you have to do this at the right time, and it's about this sort of analysis of this and that, and guys are thinking, man, I'm not good at anything she just said. Right?
Yeah. Well,
I'm
that
already
is
lost.
that is not my intention. So I'm a bit of a nerd, so I get really turned on by all the research, which may not be something that interests your audience.
Research doesn't sound playful to me, Alicia. You're going to have to turn this ship around for me.
It's not. So stick to the basics, connect to your body, push the edges, stay tuned in, put your attention on the woman that you're with, be curious about her.
Be observant.
Yeah, be observant. All of that is gonna bring out the playfulness in her.
I think a lot of guys have a set of preconceived notions that surround any woman they feel sexual attraction towards. Chief among those, at the top of the list for most guys, I think, most guys, literally, is she's looking for an excuse to reject me. The second one in line would probably be she is so beautiful and so hot that she's not going to tolerate anything but perfection out of me. I have to dot every I and cross every T. When meanwhile, everybody has their own personality traits, and I have always just been floored by how dorky and nerdy so many incredibly attractive women are. I mean, they love silly jokes. They love being silly. They love doing dorky things. They can celebrate the mundane. Mm-hmm. Everything looks like a quest to have fun, no matter how simple it is.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times guys think these beautiful women, who they perceive as beautiful, especially the women they want, the women who they find sexually attractive, are going to have these high standards and are going to be so difficult to please. And you just said it yourself. You're a nerd.
Yeah.
And a lot of women take themselves a lot less seriously in all of those regards and many others than men are expecting them to be. So it involves a little bit of vulnerability for a guy to relax, get in the moment, and just kind of trust the system here. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. That's such a wonderful point. And I think that a lot of the time when men are worrying about women rejecting them or being perfect, the problem there is that their attention is focused on themselves. So they're not focusing their attention outward on the dorky, nerdy, imperfect, gorgeous, radiant, challenging, and wonderful woman that they're with, whoever that happens to be for that man. So that's why being able to connect with your body, sense what you're sensing, and then put your attention on her, let yourself be curious about her, will alleviate or take some of the pressure off of, oh my God, is she going to reject me? Am I saying the right things? Is she looking at my shoes? Is my fly open? Whatever it is that their mind is getting distracted with.
What immediately comes to mind is this concept. It is absolutely impossible, by any stretch of the imagination, for any human to come off as authentic and or to relax when perfection is the standard to which the bar has been raised.
Totally.
It's impossible. So there's just no way you're going to make any woman feel relaxed enough to become comfortable in your presence and in turn be playful with you and then maybe get naughty with you. Who knows, right?
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. Without you relaxing and realizing, hey, you don't have to be perfect. So many men are like, man, if I screw up once, she's just going to turn tail and run away.
Yeah.
Here's something very practical, gentlemen, and I want to know what you think about this, Alicia. Let's say something happens on the date where you say something stupid, the word comes out wrong, you trip over your words. I don't know, you spill mustard on your shirt, you knock coffee over. The first impulse is going to be, oh my God, I blew it. Oh, I'm such an idiot. This woman's going to just absolutely not be able to stand me now. Hey, you know what? It's an opportunity, not a liability. Because if you can relax and joke about it, like nothing happened, and quip about it in some way where you just don't seem rattled by it, she's going to go, hey, look, here's a guy who knows how to make me feel comfortable. Because she's going to immediately feel uncomfortable that you squirted ketchup all over her or whatever happens. And the date may be over if you squirt ketchup all over her. Just saying.
Yeah. Or it could be just a great opportunity to make an extremely effective joke about the dry cleaner or who knows.
You know, on our first date, Emily and I were at breakfast and one of us spilled coffee. I don't remember which one it was, but I remember what was said. What was said immediately was, oh, I feel so much better now that one of us has made a mistake because now I'm free to screw up. The pressure's off.
Yeah.
And we both laughed.
Oh,
something
so
like that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that comes from being observant and just relaxing and letting the words come.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of going, oh God, what did I have memorized for when this happens? I got to say the exact right words in the exact right order. That's just nonsense. Just flow, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I would say that if you're one of those people who is good with banter and quips and jokes, then that's going to come easily to you. If you're somebody who is a little more self-conscious or who's a little more emotional or kind of gets caught up in your vulnerability, you can also just try being honest so that if you spill coffee all over the table, you can just share exactly what you're feeling and thinking at that moment. Like, oh boy, that wasn't such a great move, or how impressive was that? Or I'm feeling a little bit insecure. So I think that sometimes just being honest or transparent about whatever's going on for you, women find that very endearing and it takes the pressure off of them.
Yeah. So many people think that is the absolute end of this first date when, hey, it was never about the coffee and whether it stayed in the cup or was spilled on the table to begin with.
Yeah.
It was about, do we connect? Do we like each other? Guys, I've said it before. I'll say it again. It bears repeating. Job number one, when you're meeting a woman for the first time in a romantic setting, you can call it a first date, you can call it a first meeting, whatever, is do we like each other? Are we getting along? That has nothing to do with whether the coffee spilled or not. Think about it, guys. Put the shoe on the other foot. If you're out with a woman and she's absolutely endearing to you, you like her personality, she's beautiful, she's sexy, you want more of her, what mistake is it she's going to make that would make you absolutely change your mind at the drop of a hat and go, you know what? Forget it. Well, it isn't going to be any little social faux pas like that. I mean, granted, something could happen that may make you change your mind, but it certainly isn't going to be a spilled coffee or a garbled sentence or a lost meaning in something or a misunderstanding that's simple. I mean, most people have a wonderful sense of humor. Those who don't tend to remain dateless, by the way. A sense of humor, not being offended so easily, all these traits that make us more likable and, dare I say, connectable to each other. You look for those on dates. You have the freedom to evaluate that in each other. And the more you exhibit them with each other, the greater the likelihood you're going to like each other, spilled coffee or not. And that brings us to flirting. I don't know how, but we wanted to make sure we talked about flirting here. And I promised you before we hit record on this particular episode, Alicia, that I would let you riff on the relationship between playfulness and flirting first person without hearing anything I have to say on it yet. So please share that with this audience.
Sure. So flirting is an art. It takes practice. It takes commitment.
There you go, making it sound intimidating again. Come on now.
Yeah. Well, the reason I say that is because we live in this world where we over prioritize work and we over prioritize production, and it's all about getting things right. So I'm really trying to appeal to your male audience here. See, if I make it work, if I make it a task, if I make it something that, they have to practice, I'm just guessing that they're going to possibly rise to the challenge. That's what I'm doing, Scott.
Okay. I see what you're doing there. I see you working.
Okay. So flirting it's really giving yourself permission to have no goal. And, I like thinking about the word foreplay here because it's really, foreplay is a misnomer.
Cheeto-fingered guys, 35 years old, sitting in their mama's basement, paying no rent, are rejoicing everywhere at that. No goals? Awesome. I'm already an excellent flirt.
Exactly. Well, I don't know about that. You got to put a little bit of creativity and a little bit of effort into it as well. But really, flirting is a dance that you're willing to do with a woman. And the thing I like about it is that for it to feel good to a woman, she really needs to sense that you don't have a goal, right? There's no kind of end goal here. You're doing it for the pure pleasure of being in the present moment with her and just kind of bantering or picking up on details about her that are kind of triggering thoughts that you're then sharing with her in a playful way. So, that's all I got for you, Scott. I mean, too open-ended.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let's help out a little here. Let me do something rather than simply being here silent. Contrary to this entire conversation. And I'm indeed going to go ahead and throw a huge monkey wrench into the works here against my better judgment, just because I think it makes for good content. Societally, we are in a dark place nowadays because a lot of people don't like each other. A lot of people get on social media, they find other people who agree with them safely, and they together point the finger at some enemy and demonize them. I would dare say, at great peril, right, to losing some guys in my audience or maybe even confusing the bejeebers out of you, I don't know. I'm going to say at great peril that I think a lot of guys are lousy flirts because they fear women, in turn because they don't understand women. We fear that which we don't understand. And when we fear it, we start to greatly dislike it.
Yes.
So a lot of guys have been beaten down a little bit. They haven't gotten this part of their life handled. They haven't done it right in quite some time because they're coming off a breakup or a divorce, or maybe they've never really gotten it right ever. So they've started to get a little bitter around the edges towards women. They go out on a date and go, all right, here we go again. I'm going to try. I'm going to fail. She's going to make fun of me. She's going to reject me. I can't stand these chicks. Right?
Yeah.
Well, it all starts with actually liking women, doesn't it? Because then you can get past the agenda. I'll tell you what, Alicia, I'm sure you already know this, but a lot of guys, when they hear the word agenda associated with a first date, they think sexual agenda. Like, okay, most guys are on a first date trying to get this woman into bed, right? A lot of guys are thinking my agenda is just not to get rejected. Well, let's just drop the word agenda anyway. What if what you were trying to make happen here was a situation where the comfort was there? What if you just simply enjoyed some time spent with a female human being because you, wait for it, like female human beings? This is fun for you already just to have a woman in front of you.
Yes.
Then things can start to flow a little bit more naturally, can't they?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So when a guy is sitting in front of a woman and she doesn't seem like she's naturally all that playful, maybe she's a little bit of what I call a non-reactor. Should a guy give up? Should he say, well, you know what? She wasn't any fun. Or is there a little girl under there who never really outgrew playfulness? And, I'm loading this sentence up with that. But I genuinely believe women never outgrow being playful. Any woman. What does a guy do in that situation? How does he stand in a gap where, this isn't just a giggly, happy-go-lucky woman over here. This is a woman where it's going to take some coaxing. Rather than giving up, what is the nature of the risk-reward scenario for a guy to stick with it and maybe go the extra mile to help her have fun, either by being more patient or changing the subject to something else or just going in a few different directions or attempting to be light? What can a guy do in those situations? Because I'm going to go ahead and spill the beans. When women aren't particularly good at being playful or flirting, gorgeous, smart, intelligent, sharp women really can go dateless because they're not fully grasping the extent to which guys just don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
So how can you be that guy who is richly rewarded by the fullness of that woman's playfulness if she isn't really good at exhibiting it up front? Because a lot of women nowadays they're business women. They're in the masculine a lot. They may be coming off a tough day at work. How do you free them up?
Yeah. Well, this ties into the whole yin yang, the masculine, feminine energies that we all have within us, whether we're women or whether we're men. And in that situation, when you're with a woman who's in her masculine and disconnected from pleasure, who's disconnected from her own sense of desire, and who isn't even able to follow her own inner GPS, then as a man, it is more on you to coax her by tapping into that GPS and helping guide her to some degree. And the way there are multiple ways you can do that through conversation. You can start writing down little Post-it notes, write the first line of a poem and ask her to write the second line of a poem. You can talk to her about what she enjoyed as a child, what she did for fun. Did she rollerblade? Did she play tickle tag? Did she like jumping on trampolines or roller skating? You can kind of find ways to reconnect her with that drive, that pleasure, that desire, that really that's what women are. Women are beacons of pleasure and desire that men are drawn to.
Isn't that something? I believe you're absolutely correct. And that is something that has been archetypal throughout cultures in years past into antiquity, is women are both the givers and receivers of pleasure.
Yeah.
And yet so many men find themselves so miserable around women, and then they wonder why women are miserable in return. But yes, if you help a woman experience pleasure, and again, it comes back to safety, right? She's likely to give you pleasure in return. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to go ahead and tell you something. You had no way of knowing this, but I've actually coined a term for exactly what you just described. I call it the buffet conversation. And it is indeed a fantastic tactic for getting a woman to open up. Instead of saying to a woman, so what do you like to do for fun? You give her a few buffet options.
Yes.
So what did you do when you were a kid? Did you jump rope? Did you play tickle tag? I would go for the tickle tag option regardless if I were in that conversation. But you give her 3 or 4 things. And if she still shrugs and says, I don't know, well, then give her 3 more options until something lights up her face and she goes, yeah, well, that one's kind of fun, I guess. And then you can kind of riff off of that. You have some jumping off place to go from.
Yes. Oh, what a great term. Buffet conversation. That's
buffet
great.
Conversation. Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's simple. There's nothing to learn there. You just come up with a few ideas. Yeah. Now, if you go to the well 2 or 3 times, Alicia, maybe she is just boring and no fun.
Could be.
Could be her own fault she's dating. But I love that. And I think you've brought out wonderful, wonderful practical steps for guys today and talked about this in a way that every man needs to hear. Another thing that would be great for guys to do on a date is bust out a copy of the couple's quiz book.
That's true.
Start a conversation from that, right?
Yeah.
And with that, what I want to do is I want to guide guys to my Amazon influencer page at mountaintoppodcast.com/Amazon, where they can not only find a copy of the couple's quiz book by author Alicia Munoz, they can also find No More Fighting and A Year of Us. Go ahead and go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Amazon to find all the books from Alicia Munoz. Also, if you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Munoz, MUNOZ, you'll be transported over to Alicia's very fun and playful Instagram account where you can follow her. So that's there for you when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/MUNOZ. Alicia Munoz, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a fun and, dare I say, playful conversation.
Yes, likewise.
And guys, if you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com lately, go there, sign up for 25 minutes of talking to me for free. Won't cost you a dime. If we go over 25 minutes, that's okay too. Guys, fall is already here. 2021 is almost 3/4 done. Everybody has their nose to the grindstone. They're getting on it, and it's time to get the right woman in your life. If this particular show has inspired you to work on your skills with women, hey man, I'm here for you. Talk to me for free for 25 minutes. That's where it all starts. Go to mountaintoppodcast.com and sign up and get on my calendar, and we'll take it from there. Also, when you're there, please visit our sponsors, Hero Soap and Origin in Maine, by using the links on the page. You can use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 when you partake of any of the fine goods from either of our sponsors. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scot McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.